And good morning, Paris and Le Bourget. We are live here from Le Bourget COP21 Day 3. We'll be here with every single acronym you ever imagined you never wanted to learn for the rest of your life. And we'll be updating you with all of the great news from Day 1, Day 2, and yes, we are now in Day 3. After an amazing first day with over 150 heads of state and president making a number of wondrous statements that inspired us all into the heavens and beyond. We then went into Day 2, where we had a series of negotiations which started to get into some of the finer nuts and bolts of these climate talks. And we are here to update you with all of these nuts and bolts. We will be constructing for you the what happened last night with some key pieces of information from my lovely co-host, Tierney Smith here, who's going to be giving you some of the great communications updates of what we saw in the media overnight and what we potentially could be doing as our messaging for the day. And we have Joshua Weiss here as well, who's got some of those nuts and bolts that I've been promising, those key political updates from yesterday's negotiations and potentially some of the overnight insights that we got from some of the corridors and the secret rooms, as people like to call them, that some of these big decisions get made. We heard a little bit of interesting news from potentially some larger press conferences. There was a lovely press conference, I'm not sure if you saw it, between the Prime Minister of Kiribati and Barack Obama, where the Prime Minister called Barack Obama a lovely island boy that we could trust, which I thought that was lovely. I love to think of Barack as a nice little island boy. And a press conference, yeah. Sorry? Oh, I don't think it was a press conference. Okay, potentially not. But this is one of many updates we'll be giving you now. And without any further ado, I will be passing across to Josh to give you some of this key political update. What did we hear overnight?
Thanks, Chris. So basically yesterday, most of the leaders went home and left, but as Chris mentioned, some stuck around for bilateral meetings, big announcements, and there were a few press conferences. Barack Obama gave a press conference at the end of the day before saying he was out, and then there were a few statements made by leaders. The meeting in particular that Chris was talking about was one that we've been anticipating. The U.S., Obama in particular met with 5 heads of state from island countries. It was a closed-door meeting, but the outcome, according to Marshall Islands President Christopher Luck, was giving him confidence. He was really hopeful. So we had more sort of continued political momentum. Other leaders stuck around from Africa. We saw a big announcement that the whole continent came up with there's a continent-wide agreement to expand renewable energy to 300 megawatts by 2030. So gigawatts by 2030. So that's I've been struggling with that number. I sent an email that said 300 million gigawatts. So Africa, we all know Africa could power the universe, but they're going to start with the continent. So just to put that number in context, the continent's energy output at the moment is 150 gigawatts total, which includes a lot of fossil fuels. So 300 gigawatts by 2030 is really significant. That's all renewable energy.
So that's a doubling of all the major installed capacity.
Yep, that's right. Of course, that's a big number that comes with a price tag. And as negotiations as this session pivoted from big announcements from leaders, from heads of state, feeding energy into this, it started to sort of transition into more heavy emphasis on the text-based negotiations, right, the Paris Agreement. And one of the troublesome spots is clarity on climate finance. So unless we figure out how to first get to 100 billion in climate finance annually by 2020, and then importantly, it's not even being discussed how to, at least by developed countries, how to go beyond 100 billion after 2020. We saw some fantastic announcements for increases in renewables. And we know there's a huge price tag that comes with adaptation. And we know that even $100 billion in annual climate finance isn't enough. So as negotiators dug into the text last night, Monday night and all day yesterday, climate finance is one of the places where we're not confident that they're making good progress. Some of the other areas where progress is being made, it seems, is work around a long-term goal. So obviously we're not in the room for these meetings. You can see summaries or kind of the latest on the UNFCCC website. There's an APP section of the UNFCCC website, and they will post the people leading those working groups will post the latest text. And so we've seen that in the long-term goal discussions, they kind of rearrange the text. Nothing substantive, but it is a bit streamlined. On adaptation, there's a long-term goal discussion where options were slimmed down. On work stream 2 on near-term climate action and review, and on adaptation, it seems that negotiators are getting stuck on support for these initiatives. So here again, it comes back to finance and clarity on finance. It's a big challenge for us here. We knew that coming into this, and we're starting to get report outs from these meetings that it's sort of mucking things up.
Just in finance, George, I understand that obviously markets is a key part of finance, and there was a little bit of an interesting discussion that happened on markets yesterday.
Yeah, so for a long time we've had sort of polarized positions on whether to include markets in this agreement. So some of the developed countries think it's essential. That's the way that they want to move their economies and see the world go, and use market mechanisms for mitigation. And a number of countries feel that's been a part of the problem. Markets are not the right approach. So we're seeing that reflected in these discussions, with Bolivia taking their long-standing position that they don't want to see any sort of role for markets. Interestingly, I think Brazil is also pushing back on markets, and from what I hear, we're not sure if that's actually going to be their position throughout, or if maybe they're just using that to sort of create some leverage for developed countries who want it in the text. So the other piece of this is on loss and damage. There's a bridge proposal in the works. A lot of these options on elements, countries are working on bridge proposals to connect the various options, right? That's kind of the goal of these meetings, and then little smaller meetings that happen in the halls and sidelines. On loss and damage, there's a bridge proposal in the works. I haven't seen it. Others who were talking about what it might involve also hadn't seen it. So we're not sure exactly what's in it, but there's some big questions around the role of finance or support in loss and damage. If it's in there explicitly, then a lot of the developed countries are going to have an issue, right? They see a risk of liability. If it's not mentioned, maybe that's something that we could at least work with. You know, obviously, support for loss and damage is crucial, and having it not mentioned, that might be an opening for us to take baby steps forward. And if it's explicitly excluded, which may be the case in this bridging proposal, that's pretty much a non-starter, right? We know that loss and damage from climate impacts is something that needs support. So look out for that bridge proposal, or what people are saying on it. And in particular, I think there's going to be a lot of attention on that topic today for other reasons. So I'll leave it to Terry to fill you guys in on that. Lastly, the section of the text on the purpose of this agreement, Article 2, is where, in the strongest form, the sort of social package that a lot of us in the civil society space have been putting our contributions, right? So intergenerational equity, human rights, gender equality, a just transition. A lot of these really important pieces to many of us are in that section, and there was a bridging proposal by Norway that was put forward in an attempt to streamline this and move faster, that cuts them out. So that stuff might still exist in the preamble, which is sort of a weaker, maybe a weaker place in the agreement. I don't know, maybe if you have opinions on that, you could weigh in. And from what I understand, the problem is the discussions on the preamble there's a lot of politically loaded stuff in the preamble. That's going really slow. So when it comes down to the 11th, 12th, 13th hour, 20th hour, when we're down very into this thing, if we're still stuck on the preamble, that could just get tossed. So if we don't keep human rights, intergenerational equity, gender equality, these important pieces in Article 2 in the purpose section, there's a chance that where they go from this proposal currently being put forward is also insecure. So some attention there that I think is pretty deserved. A lot of people worked really hard for that. And I guess maybe that's it. I've got a few other updates. Maybe we should bring it out.
Are you cutting yourself off, Pedro?
I'm cutting myself off.
Is this a first? Has Josh decided he's said enough? Well, anyway, that was a great political update. Thanks for that, Josh. And again, I apologize for mixing up Kiribati and the marshals. Trying to speak louder. So don't worry about the microphone, because it sounds like I'm going to shout at you guys. But no worries there. So we're next going to skip into some of the key news. So Tini, what was
actually, Chris, can we go around see if there are any other contributions?
Okay, no worries. So I'm going to go round now and see if there's any other contributions. And Josh can probably hand you a microphone as he comes around. So is there anyone else with any key political updates this morning?
There are obviously lots of negotiations happening simultaneously, so we don't have a full picture. Is anybody else tracking issues or have contributions that you might be able to offer? Country or regional perspectives, maybe? Nothing yet? Okay, we'll jump back to Chris's original plan.
So, we have had 2 days of negotiations so far, and many of you have a lot of insights and negotiations so far. We have a friend of mine, Andrea from Colombia. Andrea, have you been following what ILAC countries have been saying over the last 2 days, or have you been following some of the interesting developments that ILAC has been coming up with, or how's everything going?
Yes. So right now, no, I actually know what ILAC is doing right now.
No worries. But what can we expect from ILAC over the next couple of days? Is there anything exciting happening? Do you have hope for some of these discussions?
Well, I have the nation certification for them, so I hope they get all the human rights and stuff.
And is that a concern right now in the negotiations?
Well, as Jennifer said,
Is there anyone else tracking those human rights discussions that we heard about this morning? No? Obviously, this is one of the key issues for many, stakeholders here in negotiations, and this is something that potentially could be one of these action points that many people want to work on. So, in case there's no other political updates, are there any action updates that we have this morning? All right, so we have one over here. Are there any action updates over here? All right, so let's jump over here. And is this an action update from the Malaysian youth delegation, or is this an action update from another one?
For Yangon today, we actually have 2 different actions going on at the same time, actually at 12 o'clock. One of it is actually at, the Eiffel Tower building there, on one end. So we've got a divestment action by 350. We're going to be throwing around a 2.5 million carbon bubble. just to be tossing it around and things like that before that press conference at 12:30. However, the main goal is to lift up the frontline voices in regarding to divestment. So we're going to have about 15 people sharing about their personal experience regarding like why leave carbon on the ground, why divestment is important, and things like that. And at the same time, on the opposite end, at the entrance, based on the CBF declaration on Monday regarding zero carbon by 2050, they are also having an action together with the long-term working group Yango in the front, where it's basically, I can see some people already in here with their eyes painted zero. Yeah, so that's that action that's going on. So please do show your support. There are going to be people from CBF there coming to talk as well, and you can get your face painted literally right outside here after this till 12 o'clock. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's awesome, guys, and it sounds like some really cool actions. And yesterday, actually, as you are from Malaysia, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Keep standing. It seems like some of these negotiation sessions are now moving into closed-door meetings, and Malaysia in particular has been very vocal about opening up the meetings. Do you think that's something that's going to continue? Are we going to continue hearing from Malaysia in particular to try and make sure these meetings are open?
You're writing up.
I can't really say for the negotiators, but based on my opinion and from what we've been working with the Malaysian negotiators very closely, they seem very positive on these things. They seem to be really wanting to include more than just the party people in that negotiations, and I think it's really a good thing that what they're doing, that they want to include the NGOs and observers inside that area. And yeah, I really hope that they do keep pushing forward. And from what I know of the Malaysian negotiation team, I'm pretty sure that we're going to hear more from them regarding this issue. Yeah.
Great, and if there are people who want to potentially get in contact with the Malaysian delegation to thank them for some of these statements or to kind of give them further support to continue making these statements, is there a way that we can contact them? Should they come to see you, or should they kind of maybe, is there a Twitter hashtag or something like that, or how would we get in contact with them?
There isn't exactly direct contact with the Malaysian negotiation team. I mean, they're really busy with all the different work and whatnot, but however, since we are actually working very closely with them, and if you guys have anything you guys would like to pass on to the Malaysian negotiation team, yes, you can definitely come and see me after this. I'll be around here, or you can send us a tweet at Paushif MCR. So the Twitter handle is at Paushif MSIA, or you can check us out on Facebook, again the same name. And just drop us a line, and we'd be more than happy to pass along what you have to say to the Malaysian negotiation team.
So obviously, of course, there's a variety of views in the room, and no one's kind of necessarily kind of sponsoring any particular negotiating group or any particular policy, but this has been something that has been noticed by a number of people that for the single issue of stakeholder participation in the negotiations, it seems like Malaysia's been making a lot of positive statements there, and definitely there's some other parties in the room that we would love to hear similar statements made. So if that's kind of an example you want to pass on, potentially that's something that we could act on, and potentially we could try and kind of encourage more parties to be more open about involving stakeholders in these negotiations. Obviously, we're all here for another 2 weeks' time, and it's not going to be the most fun 2 weeks if no one gets to see what's going on. So that's something that maybe be one of those more kind of widely accepted ideas. Is there anyone else with kind of key negotiation updates, key kind of things that they want to share about the negotiations? No? All right, I'm going to put our GCC correspondent, Reem, on the spot again. So a couple of days ago, you mentioned some of your ideas for how the GCC, the Gulf countries in particular, might be acting over the next couple of weeks. And we heard that potentially not many of the GCC leaders spoke. Do you think that will say anything about the next couple of weeks of their engagement in this process? Or are you hopeful that there's going to be a bit of a change in tone and maybe there's going to be much more engagement?
First off, it was a huge disappointment for us because I've got things on my lap. So I've got, so look what you've just done. Shattered my thoughts. Shame on you. So hoping that some of the GCC leaders would actually say something important during their opening statements, and they were actually on the list. Funnily enough, an hour before their turn came, they pulled out, and so the names were actually taken off the list. So we've actually been, and Saudi was meant to be the last speaker, so we've been chained to the laptop for about 5 hours just to get the name taken off half an hour before they spoke. So we were very disappointed. What we understood from the intel that we've got, if you like, is that Saudi is at the moment bullying the rest of the Arab League, and there's a division within. But we don't really know exactly what is they're trying to bully. What is it that they're trying to get everyone to do? And we're trying to find that out. And we'll see in the next few days what happens, but we're closely following and seeing if we can get an opportunity to get in, or at least corner one of the delegates to actually get something out. Now, the next person you need to pick on, okay, is the Arab Youth Climate Movement's regional North Africa coordinator, who follows Egypt, which is also because Sisi came. I don't know if any of you watched his talk or statement, which was a huge statement, and he also said something about actually keeping to 1.5, which was really good, and that was completely different.
All right, thank you for that. And maybe, Sharif, maybe you can fill us in on some of these details. Rima just mentioned there might be divisions within kind of the Arab group, and that maybe some of those divisions are geographical. And obviously, Egypt is kind of one of those Arab group countries which is kind of geographically very separate from the GCC. So what was this statement that we're talking about, and what do you see as some of those divisions? Are they kind of going to perhaps create longer divisions throughout the week, or is that something that, maybe it's just a bit of a rumor and probably will die down very quickly?
Actually, he stated in the speech is that we need to commit to 1.5 degree, which is awesome, but the problem that the long-term goal or the plans in Egypt didn't go with what he's planning to do, and there's no specific plans to reduce the carbon emission, as previously we started to investing in industry and there's no plans for the renewable energy. We hope so to achieve some progress in this stuff and pushing the negotiations afterwards to that. But so far there is no specific plans to reduce the carbon emissions.
And there was actually some intel that might have come out of yesterday that potentially those discussions on 1.5 that were happening in the negotiations maybe were being sidelined a little bit, particularly by one of the GCC countries, which I think Rima mentioned quite a lot. Do you think that there is kind of a general feeling within the Arab group that there are some countries that would support 1.5 and some that don't? Or is it kind of something that is very, very difficult for Arab countries in particular to accept, maybe because of their economic baselines?
Actually, most of the arguments is related to it's about sharing the responsibility of the carbon emissions and so on. For example, Morocco is working hard on investing in solar energy and renewable, but it's going to be hard, for example, in specific countries to go forward and investing in renewable energy, especially currently they are usually talking about climate finance and so on. So somehow it's a little bit hard, but there is no idea about it.
Okay, well, maybe that's something of key interest for a number of people here. Obviously, the 1.5 goal is something that's very much linked to these negotiations, the heart and soul of, I guess, the mitigation element of these negotiations, but also has, massive crossovers with adaptation and loss and damage. Basically, if 1.5 is surpassed, then the adaptation and the loss and damage, I guess, price tags get a little bit higher. So that's maybe something to follow. Thank you, Sharif, for that update. And we'll probably be calling on Rima and Sharif a number of times throughout the next couple of weeks to give us continuous updates on the Arab group. Is there any other people in the audience who can give us a geographical update that might be interesting, particularly maybe someone from Europe or someone from Africa, as we haven't really heard of from anyone there today? So actually, we have some French colleagues in the audience. And what we've had a number of announcements from the French government over the last 2 days. Obviously, there was Francois Hollande was very, very keen on supporting a number of the big announcements on day one, while other presidents were here. and there was that partnership with Narendra Modi announcing the Solar Alliance. Do you think that the French government so far is kind of happy with how the COP has progressed over the first 2 days, or you think that there might be some concerns over kind of maybe some of the things that were updated on this morning?
Yeah, I'm not French, so I'll pass this on.
I'm French, but I don't have any update to do with that.
How do you think the French people are feeling around COP so far? Is there kind of a lot of positive energy in the media and in kind of general discussion, or is it still kind of grunge, or is there words?
Actually, the energy in France is more about having long-term goals, not included into the negotiations. It's more like having actions on the long terms, like in your daily life, like involving all the citizens and reclaiming the economy, reclaiming the policies and the citizen actions. So it's not much about climate negotiation and COP negotiation. In France, the atmosphere is more about what can we do, in a concrete way. So people are not really following climate negotiation. I think they are more in a long-term perspectives.
Well, that maybe ties in exactly with why kind of Holland is supporting so many of these big initiatives on day one. They were kind of real concrete actions that kind of will contribute in a long-term manner. So potentially that's a great update. Thank you. That's something to look out for. Who's going to give us some of these communications updates, and we just asked about the French media circuit. What's going on in the English media circuit? Because you've got your thumb. How do you say that? Your finger on the thumb? No, that's not how you say it. How do you say that phrase?
Your finger on the pulse, I think is the way you say that phrase. So another day of lots and lots of news. I don't think anyone's got bored yet of the climate conference, definitely not. A lot of people are still sort of talking about leaders and leaders' statements, but some journalists are also now sort of pivoting that into actually looking at how that's going to translate into the negotiations. So a lot on that. One thing that did sort of stand out a little bit this morning, a lot of media have picked up on the idea of the legal kind of the legally bindingness of any new climate deal. I think Obama may have said something about this in his press conference yesterday, potentially just a one-line comment, but a lot of people are focused on it, that some aspects of the agreement could be legally binding. So that's got an awful lot of attention. Just still a lot, excuse me, a lot going on and a lot of reading to catch up this morning. In terms of looking at today, I don't think the COP's found us yet in giving us a lot of different things to focus on. As Josh touched on earlier around loss and damage, that looks like it could be a really interesting one to track today, because we have a new report out from CARE International, ActionAid and WWF as a joint effort. They'll be releasing a report on loss and damage at a press conference at 2 p.m. today. And I've got a really interesting lineup of speakers to talk about loss and damage. And basically what they're aiming to do is look at the current reality of loss and damage, so how climate impacts are already affecting people around the world, but using that to pivot back to the negotiations and talk about the recommendations to make sure that anything that's agreed here is an adequate response to loss and damage. So that's at 2 p.m. And that's going to be followed directly by another press conference from US CAN, which is also looking at the same issue, but from a much more US perspective. So that could also be quite interesting, because I think there's going to be someone on that panel who's going to look at the potential huge impacts of climate change in the US, so taking it away from just developing nations and poorer nations into actually some of our larger economies.
Interesting. So you're saying there's going to be kind of a really big focus, obviously loss and damage in developing countries at the CARE press conference, I understand, and then kind of a change and a transition to potentially looking at what are the real impacts for communities in the US. Do you think that the American negotiators are able to kind of think about the impacts in the US when they are kind of coming up with adaptation goals?
I could not answer you, Chris. I don't know, but I think hopefully the point of these press conferences from these NGOs is to give a bit more of a perspective on this. So I think it could be quite an interesting discussion to have. And it does kind of fit in with the idea that yes, the poorest and the most vulnerable countries are going to be the most affected by climate change, but at the end of the day, no one's safe. So moving on from that, also talking like a little bit about sort of industrial and developing countries split. Oxfam have also got a new report out today, which is looking at the idea of carbon inequality that was released early this morning. There's not going to be a press conference or anything here for it, but it's an interesting one that might also help you shape your messaging. And what that shows is that the poorest half of the population are responsible for just 10% of the emissions, and the world's richest 10% of countries are responsible for half of the global emissions. So 10% responsible for half the global emissions, 50% responsible for just 10% of the global emissions. So that's quite an interesting way to kind of map that out a little bit more visual. On top of that, it's also going to be a hugely positive day here, as we've already heard from the actions, a lot of focus here today on divestment. The actions are also coinciding with a few other things that 350 have got going on, so they've got a press conference at 12:30, followed by another event in the climate generations area, and they are releasing a new report on the divestment announcements and new divestment announcements since the last time they calculated it all. I don't know if back in September anyone saw the report that said that 2.6 trillion of money under management is now committed to some form of divestment. So they're looking at how that's changed between September and now, which if you think about it isn't that big a period of time. It's under embargo, so no one quite knows what the number's going to be yet. But you know, if 350's previous announcements are anything to go by, it's going to be big. So that's definitely one that you should be tuning into. And just a few other things that we've got on our radar. Don't forget that at 11 o'clock you can all tune in to Cannes Daily Press Conference. They'll give you a really good understanding of where we're at so far in the negotiations and some of the key issues going forward. The European Union is also giving their first press conference at 3 p.m, as we were just talking about the European Union. We've also got Friends of the Earth International laying out their expectations at 3 p.m. as well. There's a host of other ones, so I won't go through the whole list. They're all on the website, so yeah, check that out. Yeah, I think that's everything for me.
So, Jenny, it seems like it's been a rough couple of days for you, but thank you so much for that update. That was a really conclusive one. I think it sounds like we've got a combination of really big kind of positive news and maybe also some kind of big negative news as well when you consider some of those inequalities from the emissions and also kind of the impacts of loss and damage. They seem to tie in pretty well together, as well as having those kind of positive news about the divestment. So it sounds like there's, you know, some realistic understanding of the history of where we're at and why we're there, and then also kind of some really positive news about how the divestment movement is potentially shifting some of that and going forward. So thanks for that, and be sure to look out for those announcements. Tierney's actually kind of writing up some notes now in secret from this Daily Tck, and she'll probably be including some of the links to some of those big announcements today, but also kind of feel free to check them out. I'm sure they'll be tweeted about, I'm sure they'll be Facebook linked, they may be Snapchatted and Instagrammed and other things that I'm not included in or invited to. Unfortunately, even my youthful body sometimes is not invited to some of these new social media items. But basically, unless we have any other updates, that probably concludes us for the day. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been day 3 of the Daily Tck. Obviously, this is being streamed and broadcasted. So if any of you want to access the link and share with your friends and family, you're more than welcome to. Just go to the Climate Tracker YouTube page and you'll find day 3 of the Daily Tck. And also you can share this with any friends and colleagues, of course, and this can be a resource or a reminder later in the day. Obviously, Josh went through quite a lot of detail and Tierney went through a lot of this different press. So if you just want to go back over that nice and slow, you can do that. Maybe do some reverse mode. I think if you play the Daily Tck backwards, actually you get some interesting messages, kind of like those Led Zeppelin old records and things like that. So look out for that. But otherwise, we'll be back here at 10:15 tomorrow. And like I said on the first day, but I probably didn't say it yesterday, if any of you have specific actions or specific updates and you want to join us up here on the podium, it is a fun little kind of feeling to be above everyone else and get to speak into these microphones and see yourself on camera about a meter in front of you. So if anyone wants to experience that thrill of an emotional high, just let me know and you can come up here and join us tomorrow. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been lovely to see you all, and I look forward to seeing you again at 10:15 tomorrow.